tiny, tiny little package filled with tiny, tiny little diamonds. This is like, I don't know, $500 in diamonds. And we don't have extras, but this is a much higher quality diamonds, I'm sorry, than that first group. So these are actual real diamonds. They're called 4-pointers. So they're less than a carat, obviously, but these are legitimate real diamonds. What you guys have are cubic zirconia, and so these are fake diamonds. So they're supposed to be clear, they're supposed to be symmetrical, and sometimes they're off. Your first step is always going to be measuring. You want to measure everything. With stone setting, everything is measured. So you always want to start by zeroing out, closing the micrometer. These are out in the studio, closing the micrometer and zeroing it out. So you have it at the 0 mark. You can do millimeters or inches, whatever you're most comfortable with. And then you're going to take the stone, and right at the girdle, you're going to measure that stone. So this is just about 5 millimeters. Another way to measure the stone is to just put it on your steel plate and put it upside down on your steel plate. You can have all your stones upside down. And you know, another good way of handling the stones is to use a nice pair of tweezers with a grippy tip. So not all tweezers have a grippy tip on them, but these have like a grip on there. And normally metalsmiths don't like that, but it's so much better for working with diamonds than a smooth grip, because you could accidentally pinch it too hard and lose your grip on them. But so having some prongs or some tweezers, I mean, to help you handle the diamonds is a really good idea. So you can set a table down on your bench and then measure it this way as well. But measuring is always your first step. Always, always, always your first step. So we have a 5 millimeter that's pretty darn close to 5 millimeter. These are supposed to be 3 millimeter, and that's pretty close to 3 millimeter. And then let's make sure our 4 millimeter is what it says it is. Oh, that's probably the closest. See if we can knock it into submission there. Nope, that's about as close as we're going to get. So we want to make sure all of our stones are what they say they are. When it comes to your diamonds, these are going to range. Not everybody's going to have the same size stone. So when it comes to natural stones, when it comes to stones that aren't commercially made, not made or cut by a laser or factory, that's when we get into a little bit more variety. So you want to be careful. I'm going to set the 5 millimeter stone first, and look, check this out. Well, bam! Look at this. Look at this. Look at all of these prong settings.
Is it all 24 karat?
No, this is plated. This was given to us by surplus. It broke off, and then somebody took it to a lost and found, and then it's been donated to metals for instruction. These are not real diamonds. And they're even worse. I think they have that like shiny metal plating on the bottom, like when you get like toy jewelry or something. But these are settings that you can actually buy and link together. You can buy one of these completely without stones and set your own stones in them. That's how sort of commercialized and streamlined this process really is. So these are set the exact same way I'm about to show you. So these are all standard commercial stone settings. This is a ring I found in a quarter machine. I was like, I have to have that thing. So like $2 later, I finally got it. And this is literally, it's a prong setting, but it's a quarter machine ring. But you know, that took effort to set this thing. A person did this. So check this out, but this is a prong setting. But they didn't really care too much about breaking the stone or having a high quality or high valuable stone in here. So I'm going I have my baskets or my prong settings. I Owen soldered these on to a little pendant so that these demos aren't worthless, and the pendant has a roll-away bail. So this was just cut out like a leaf basically, and then the bail was rolled away and then soldered together, and then the setting was soldered on top of it. So in terms of your samples, if you're able to get into the studio, this is just a really great way of making samples but still making them into jewelry, right? You can make them into something. It doesn't just have to be samples. But if you're not going to make your way into the studio, you can just straight up, handle these itty bitty little things without putting them on anything. So our next step is to take the heart burr that is in your kit, and I should have one around here. So in your kit, you have a heart burr. I gave you each a heart burr, which is pretty awesome if you ask me. The other confab class never got their own burr. So yeah, but burrs are expensive. You could potentially, once I find it, you could potentially have this burr for, the rest of your career. So burrs usually come in little packages like this, and then you sort of peel off the end, and then you can pull it out like that. So this is a heart burr, and a heart burr is sort of this spaceship shape. You can see that it has a really, really sharp ridge on it, almost to imitate, the girdle on a stone. So we almost have the pavilion, we almost have a table, right? It almost has all of the characteristics of a stone. And this is called a heart burr, H-A-R-T, heart burr. And this is my favorite stone setting burr. Ironically, there is a burr called a stone setting burr, and I rarely use this burr unless I'm hogging out like a lot of material. And you can see the difference of this burr versus the heart burr is that it has this really tall, as if the table just continues straight up. So the difference there, right there. So we have a heart burr and a stone setting burr. The stone setting burr I'm going to use when I do a little tube setting, but the heart burr is what I'm going to be primarily using for all of our prong settings here. So I'm going to load that up into my flex shaft. You guys have I believe a 2.5 millimeter or a 3 millimeter. I can't remember. I'm pretty sure it's a 2.5 millimeter in your kit. But what do we do first? We want to match our burr with exactly what size our stone is. And ideally, it would be slightly smaller. So we have a 3 millimeter stone or a 5 millimeter stone, and our heart burr is just under that 3 millimeters or just under that 5 millimeters. And so we're in the really sweet spot with the burr in your kit, which is a 3 millimeter stone or a 3 millimeter burr. So I'm gonna open up my photo booth here, and I'm gonna show you where there is a variety of burrs. You see me? Yes, you see my face now?
Yep.
Okay. So in the cabinet here, there's a bin. In the bin, there are numerous burrs in here. This is our stone setting sort of bin. It has a series of stone setting burrs in here. It's labeled, it says high-speed stone setting burrs. It's actually filled with heart burrs, actually. So you got to be careful. But I have 4 millimeter heart burrs in here, which are relatively large heart burrs. And then the big mothers, which are 5 millimeter heart burrs. And then a variation of other burrs in here. You'll also see a kit, this old cool wooden kit that has a bunch of burrs in here, and a little chart to tell you what diameter. It's pretty handy. The brand predominantly that we use that we buy these all from Rio Grande, but the brand is Lynx, Lynx, Lynx brand. I don't know if you can see that backwards, Lynx. And that's the brand that we predominantly use. They are expensive, so these are only for studio use. These are not your personal use, but you did get a high quality burr in your kit, lucky you, because Kessler's had donated material. So this stays in here, and we take really good care of all of that material. Okay, so you want to make sure your heart burr or your burr matches the size of your stone. So going back here, we always double check. Otherwise, it's a futile effort and you could risk breaking your stone. So you want to make sure that your burr is slightly smaller than your stone, or totally smaller than your stone. So here, I'm going to set a 5mm stone in a prong setting with a almost 3mm heart burr. I could go up. I do have a larger heart burr from the closet here if I wanted to hog out a little bit more material, and that gives us right around 4mm. And so this is another good burr to have around when you're doing the big honkin' one, but you don't really need it. So I'm going to go ahead and I have these are safety glasses that are cheaters. So they're magnifying safety glasses, and I also have regular cheaters that are just $3 at the hardware store, but they're not safety glasses. So you want to be careful. You can get the safety glasses, or you can get a jeweler's loop, which we have jeweler's loops here in the cabinet as well, and they look something like this. This is kind of a dorky one. I like the super dorky ones. Owen and Maddie and I were talking about these, but these have different levels of magnification. As you can see, they work pretty awesome. And these are available in the checkout cabinet as well. Anybody can check one of these out. And they're super handy for stone setting. And I just usually, if I'm doing a lot of stone setting, I'm wearing it on my head pretty much the whole time. So I have my specs on, and I'm going to take my divider first of all, and I'm going to figure out exactly where I want my stone to sit inside of here. So I'm just going to mark with my divider, get it as small as I can really. I want the stone to be nestled in there because I can always trim the top of my prongs a little bit. I want it to be nestled in there, but I want it to be nestled in at a reasonable spot that I can score it and mark it with my divider. So I don't know if you can see my mark in there, but I have a tiny little scribed mark inside, and I'll take a little Sharpie, and this is a thick line, so it's kind of dumb, but it's right around where that Sharpie line is. And I'm just going to do that on all of these prongs all the way around. So every single prong is going to have a mark on it that I'm scratching at the exact same distance. So I'm resting one end of the divider to make this look bigger. I'm resting one end of the divider against the top of the prong, and then the other, I'm dragging it. As I drag it along, it's the same mark. It's the same distance no matter where I'm dragging it, as long as I'm registered at the edge of the metal here. So no matter what, the divider becomes the master measuring device. So if I want it here, I have a nice mark there. If I want it here, I have a nice mark there. It's all the same distance. So you're using the edge of the metal as the edge of your mark, and then you can go ahead and scribe. And so this is a large version of what I'm doing. The scale at which I'm working with my divider now looks more like boink, like that, right? So it's tiny little mark, but it's the same wherever I go. So I could mark it here, mark it here, mark it here, because I'm using the edge of the metal for the one side and then the scribe line on the other. And so I have these three marks, marked in there, and then I can also mark it all along the edge, and they disappear because it's the exact same measurement over and over and over again. Okay, so I can do it at this scale too. Doesn't really matter, it'll all be the same line. So divider is my absolute all-time favorite tool, and talk about like not having to be super precise and like measure shit, like boom, that you can't get more perfect than that. So I don't really like measuring. I like working more intuitively and then following whatever sort of design I'm making on the work with my divider. And of course, that's not, you can't always do that, right? Depends on your design, depends on how you work, all of those things. So I've marked my piece here. Let's see if I can get even closer, Jesus. I've marked my piece, and I have scribe marks and then my giant Sharpie mark right there. And I'm going to go ahead and with my heart burr on my flexible shaft here, I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut this perpendicular. So I'm going to cut it in perpendicular this way, and then I'm going to cut it in perpendicular on all 4 of these prongs, just to cut that material. And you might see, because I'm also demoing, you might see that I'm going to grab the prong and whoop, the burr is going to accidentally get caught and go around the prong. That is amateur hour. It does happen. You guys will do it and you'll sort of destroy the tip of this prong. But you want to have as much control as possible. I hope it happens because I want you to see what you're going to end up accidentally doing. But hopefully I do it. I'm kind of scrunched up in here. Not ideal. You want to be comfortable. You want to have full control of the tool. Okay, so I'm going to cut in perpendicular to the prong, and I'm going to do that 4 times. So I'm going to cut in to this bottom prong. I'm going to twist this and cut in again, and then twist the prong setting, and then cut in again and again and again. And the trick is I want to make sure that the stone is going to sit perfectly parallel to the top and perfectly parallel to the bottom. So it's really important that these all be at the exact same height. So here I go. And it's also important not to cut through the thickness of the metal. And so maybe kind of hard to see there. I need something black. Kind of hard to see. Oh, perfect. That is my cell phone. Okay, so I've cut in just slightly, and there, not the best quality, but there you can see that I've started to cut a groove or a little culet, basically, out of the prong. So I'm only about maybe quarter way through, and I'm going to go ahead and continue that cut. So there I went around the prong. I'm in an awkward position here. All right. All right, so I cut one, and it's pretty deep. There we go. There you can see how it's cut in, and then I'm going to need to remove the material at the bottom of this prong. So I'm going to need to smooth that out so it doesn't crack my stone. So then I'm going to take the burr and just use it at an angle and remove that material. So I'm putting it in now at an angle, and I'm going to remove that material. So I can do everything here with one burr. So there you go. That's a good example of how you're going to accidentally get caught because I'm looking at my computer screen. You can't really watch Netflix while you set stones. Okay, so you see all that silver that's coming off? Now I removed that excess material below the prong, and that's going to be what I want to imitate on the rest of them. So here I go on the others. Oops. This thing is, I'm crunched up in this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to shorten the length of my burr so that it's in my There we go. So that it's in as far as it'll go. So there's less mandrel sticking out. And that'll give me more control. I'm also doing this on my cell phone here. Hopefully you guys won't be recording yourselves and teaching at the same time. There we go. So I'm holding it like this, and I'm scrunched up in here so you guys can catch this on video, but make sure you're in a really comfortable position. I don't like setting stones inside of these benches because it scrunches up my arms like a T-Rex. So you might find your own comfortability with setting stones, and hopefully you have really good luck. But it's make sure your body position is comfortable. And there we go. So I'm just going to cut all of these now. And then now I'm coming in at an angle, and I'm going to be removing that material. And this is why you start with the 5 mil, because you want to make sure that you kind of know what you're doing and can experience the worst case scenario on some of these. Okay, so I have cut the seat on all of these. If I can focus. Okay, there we go. I've cut the seat on all of these, and now I'm going to place the stone in. And with pendants like this, if you see this pendant, the bail is like kind of off to one side. You want the pendant to sit flat, not to have any negative space underneath it on this one. So something like this, I would tilt that up so it's pretty even, so that it sits a bit more flat. And that's how it'll sit on the body. But anyway, so I am going to grab my stone and shove her on in there. So did I do the 4 mil? What is this? I kind of forgot which one I was doing here. So you always want to check. So the calipers has a outside measurement here, where you could measure things on the outside, but it also has an inside measurement part to it. And that allows you to go inside of something, like something round, and measure the inside diameter. Inside. And so I'm going to be using the inside feature to make sure I know what size prong this was initially. I'm going to go with where I cut it is a 4 millimeter. So it's tapered, so it's hard to sort of measure that out, but I'm going to go with 4 millimeter on this. So I thought I was cutting a 5, but there we go. So make sure I have my 4 millimeter stone, and again, measure that. Okay, perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and shove the stone in. I do have some shellac for you guys, and some shellac or a little piece of wax is really handy to pick the stone up. So you tilt it up and you'll just grab it with a little piece of shellac or a little bit of wax or clay, and you can set it into position. Another tool in my arsenal are parallel jaw pliers. So these are parallel jaw pliers. They're super hunky and huge, so they're not the best for really fine work. But these close parallel. That's why they're called parallel jaw pliers. You can see these pliers, they pivot, they work like scissors. So they don't close parallel, they close the bottom first. And that's how all of these work. Just like this, it doesn't close parallel, it pivots. And so it closes here before it closes here. And it's really helpful to use parallel jaw pliers when you're working, because it closes the prongs symmetrically. It closes them parallel, which is very important. So my stone, I must have tweaked these out, and these are commercial settings, so you want to make sure that you know, they're the right size before you kind of get into this. Well, maybe this was the 5 mil. Oh, okay. We're all right. We're good. So the 5 mil prong setting should be slightly smaller, and then we're making our stone setting cut to make sure that it's the size or slightly smaller than the rest of our piece. So let me measure again. All right. Measure on the inside in those prongs. So you could measure right in the seat that you cut to make sure it's the correct size. And there, I'm almost there, but if all of these, I'm about a half a mil off, and I can cut inside of here. And the cutter, or the measuring tool, the caliper, almost goes exactly inside. So that one's a little closer. So I'm gonna just keep going a little bit more until I get a little bit closer on that one side, because that one side, it must have been a little lean. I didn't remove enough material on this side. You can kind of see how clunky it is. So I'm gonna remove just a little bit more material. All right. And if you remove too much material, you weaken the prong and you can risk breaking the stone. So now I'm going to take my stone and balance it in there. You hear that snap? It snapped it into place. And now I have set my seat. I haven't set the stone. I've only set the seat for the stone. And you'll always hear this super satisfying snap or click sound when the stone sets into place. And it looks like everything's a little crooked, but the nice thing is I have some nice tall prongs that after this is set, I can then modify and cut off those prongs. But it's nice to have enough prong to work with so that you're confident about the stone setting, and that you feel confident that you have enough material hanging on to it. Another thing is, if you screw up, you can maybe set it even lower, and then you're still in good shape. So now I need to set the stone. I want to use my cheaters here to make sure, really getting in there, to make sure that the stone isn't being compromised in any way, that it's not sitting on the girdle, which it, or sitting on the in which it kind of is on one of them. Yeah, I need to cut in more on this prong here. It's not even, but I think it's a good example for you guys. This one looks pretty good, and this one needs to be cut more. So what I'm seeing is that the pavilion of the stone is actually, which it's almost impossible to tell. The pavilion of the stone is, it's resting on the prong itself, which I'm going to have to remove a little bit more material so that the prong, it's not resting on the prong. Let's see. This one is pretty perfect. The prong just doesn't look very pretty, but you can see there's some negative space, some perfect negative space where it meets the pavilion, and it's only hanging on to it at the girdle. You can barely see that. This one, that one's in there pretty good. One of these I cut too much of the prong because I cut it at an angle. It's this one. This prong's about to rip right off. So some jewelry stores do what's called retipping, and that's when they just solder on a chunk onto the prong. They solder on some gold, or they laser weld on some gold onto the prong, or platinum onto the prong, and that holds on to the stone. So after like 20 years, you can imagine the thing that gets worn off on like grandma's, you know, wedding band or wedding ring is the prongs get worn off. And I've seen a stone where almost all of the prongs were completely worn off. So despite having problems, I'm going to set this stone. So I'm going to use parallel jaw pliers or regular pliers, just don't slip. And I'm just going to snug those prongs over that stone. Boop, boop. Snug those over. Snug, snuggaroo. And I'm using, you know, pretty good force for how little and delicate this is. My knuckles aren't turning white or anything, but it's not a wimpy process because you want to make sure that's in there forever, right? Bang, bang, bang. You want to make sure that's in there forever. And then now all I have to do is cut and modify these long prongs. Otherwise, this will get caught on your hair. It'll get caught on all kinds of things. And so filing these, you can file them. You can also have like a nice cutters and snip them off if they're just a little long. But as long as you're confident with what you're snipping, you can snip them a little shorter. You want to be careful. These are not diamonds, so you can just easily ruin these cheap cubic zirconia. It's like 12 bucks for 100 of them. But whenever you're setting stones, you always protect the stone. Whatever you do, always protect the stone. And so this is where a good set of those Gros Bay files that Peter was talking about come in handy. But for this instance, I don't have Gros Bay files because you don't have Gros Bay files. And so I'm just going to protect the stone with my fingernail. And, you know, say what you will about it having fingernails, everybody's kind of got them. And you can lean it up against the stone as much as possible, and then use that to protect the stone. You never ever want to drag a file across a stone. So I'm just sanding these and sharp or rounding them off so they can't get caught on anything. So that's our 5mm prong set stone that is cut with a heart burr. And then I'm just rounding off all of these so that they look really nice. And then the thing you want there is you want it to be perfectly symmetrical, and you want the stone to be parallel with, which I don't know if it's, I might have said it not parallel, but you want the stone to be parallel with the material, and then you want the heads of the prongs to be perfectly symmetrical. So it looks like it's dragging off to one side here. It looks a little like it's crooked, and you can modify that. You never, some people will pinch the prongs this way to correct that, but what ends up happening is you get an asymmetrical setting, and an asymmetrical setting lowers the value of the entire setting. So you want to maintain how symmetrical the prongs are. It's so reflective, it's hard to tell, but you want to make sure that these don't squeeze together in a weird way, and you're not sort of pushing them into submission this way or this way, but that you're only going on the cross section. So I'm only setting the stone along perpendicular kitty corner to each other. So I'm setting it kitty corner, so one end, and then I'm rotating it clockwise, and then I'm going to set it again by pinching the pliers. And you can do this with any pliers. They're really, it's whatever your preference is and your skill level is. I'm trying to find one that you guys would have. I have all these stupid pliers. You might have something like this. So you could use these. And the benefit to using these is you can actually feel how hard you're pushing, because it does take quite a bit of tension to set this stone. And so the more delicate the plier, the more you can feel the setting of the stone. If you have a big chunky plier, then you can't really feel what's happening or how much pressure you're applying onto the stone. And that's where you get into dangerous territory there. So That is a 1 5mm stone setting on a tiny little bale. So it's a sample and it is a setting. So if you wanted to patina these, I would patina this beforehand and then set the stone. That would be the order I would do these things. And then what you guys are going to do is you're going to set a 5mm, and then 2 4mm. Boom, here, 2 of these, and then 3. Or I'm sorry, and 2 3mm. So for your homework, you're going to prong set 2 3mm, 2 4mm, and 1, boom, 5mm. And let me tell you, you will mess up. I'm going to have this melted mess as an example for you. These melt really easily, so you know, be nice to yourself. If you need another prong setting, don't hesitate to ask. Owen and I will have some available to you. And then this is an example of cutting the seats. This does not have a stone in it. And then this is the example I did today that you can check out. And again, I just used the burr from the kit. So this is just a 3mm heart burr. And then look at that handout. You're just going to be removing enough material that doesn't compromise the stones. So it's the handout that talks about the anatomy of the stone, and you can refer to, oh, it must be on the back here. Oh, I'm sorry. Yep, it's that one. And then you can refer to this to show you how to remove the material, how much material to remove, and then here's the setting of the stone with the prong, with the pliers, and being careful of how you're filing to make sure the prongs get rounded off. So this is a start to finish, everything I just showed you, and making sure that things are set evenly. And then you have enough room to play with, right? This is a really good example. You want to have enough room that you can modify these prongs and design them and make them into what you want. So it's important to have enough room above so that when you go to set the stone very carefully, you don't limit your opportunities when it comes to setting stones. This also shows you a variety of what prongs can look like that just come with experience. So setting prongs and then, you know, having sort of decorative options for what those prongs as styles can be. So make sure you refer to this handout for your stone setting or for your prong setting. And then this uses a specific kind of tool that I just think is more like a novelty tool, but it has a short and long jaw to it so that it only pries one over at a time. But I just like using a regular pliers or a parallel jaw pliers and then just being really careful when you do it. Being able to feel the tension when you set and sort of like you're clamping around the stone, being able to feel the tension is the best possible position to be in. So now that you've seen that, I'm going to show you a video of one of the master stone setters at Kessler's so that you can get a glimpse of how quickly he can set probably $40,000 worth of stones in our 14.
Hey, what are you working on?
12-minute conversation.
Setting up a reel at about 150 stones.
150?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, on the side profile and on the top, and like all over.
Oh my gosh.
So doing that, I've done most of the inside stuff here, so I'm gonna finish this side, and I'm got these 2 rails left, and it's done.
Wow.
Center. So it's a 15-hour job. 16 hours is quoted for. We're about 2.5 hours into it.
Wow.
So I'm gonna go to the middle rail. There's larger stones in there.
Are you involved in the quoting process since you're doing the work? No? Okay.
The custom department does all the quoting.
And you just got to fulfill their promises.
Yes. And I usually The times are based on people with less experience. So, like I said, this one is 16 hours, but I think if everything goes right, I'll have it done in maybe 8. Well, take this off and fogging up.
And that was a heartburn?
Yeah, everything with a heartburn, more control. I really hardly ever use setting burrs.
Mm-hmm.
Just special occasions. Use different size for different things. I always found that this is a much nicer finished product than with a setting burr. Let's see if it'll move into place. No more cutting. These are pretty heavy prongs because it's kind of free floating in the middle. So if you would have really weak prongs, then you're asking for trouble. Kind of feel if it's gonna go in here with this.
How can you even apply pressure for stone setting on something that's like that iced out?
Problem is the ring is so tight.
I'm sorry, repeat that?
For applying the pressure to set the stone in for something with that many small stones, how do you even manage that?
Well, the prongs are still the thing that are sticking out, right? And his prongs are still kind of long. So yeah, it has a lot of stones in there in close proximity, but the prongs are still longer than they need to be. And so cutting them down or trimming them down, filing them down is all inevitable. And so those are still like protruding, even though it is tiny and everything. And then you'll see how small his pliers are that he uses to set all these stones. And I even ask him about it because everyone's like, oh, parallel jaw pliers, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, this guy is a master, you know, of his craft, and he uses like a normal, tiny little cute pliers. And it's because he can feel the pressure on the prongs. So the smaller the pliers, you know, they sort of grab onto these protruding prongs. So they stick out pretty far for how, you know, small all of this stuff actually is.
Okay, I was just curious because like setting a bigger stone, wouldn't you adjust the settings of the smaller ones just by putting pressure on them?
Once a stone is set, it's not going anywhere.
Okay.
You know, you can cut the seat for all these stones, and then set them all at the same time. But what he's doing is cutting the seat and then setting it, cutting the seat and then setting it, and then so once it's set, it's permanent. It should never come out. It should never fall out. It should never, like if you get it snagged on a piece of clothing or, you know, like it should never pull a prong away. So you're never removing that much material that you're ruining the actual infrastructure.
wrongs.
And what do you do with the X-Acto knife?
I usually use it to pry stuff around,
Oh, sure.
or, you know, I feel that it's, I can feel that it's loose and
Right.
I'm gonna just give it a.
There's the hammer.
Way to push or yank on it. Just give it a little tap with that. Get those prongs in the right position. And then later on, when I'm done with everything, I'll go to the laser and I'll round these all off so all the nice flat spots will be gone.
Wow.
And then on to the next one.
Wow. Amazing. Do you do primarily the stone setting, or do you also have to do some repairs? And
I do almost everything.
yeah.
We've changed our philosophy, so I still get a lot of the more difficult stuff, like this.
Mm.
But no, I do everything.
What's your favorite?
This,
Yeah.
it's always a challenge. It's never the same. There's no two stones the same, and even though it's supposed to be, they're never the same. So you're always challenged to do it a little different. Keeps your brain going. The hardest part is just the fitting. You know, you get to the regular seat, and then it's like, okay, well, this is just a little more here, a little more there. And like I said, it keeps your brain going and on your toes. Because I pushed it in, it went down a little past where I wanted, so then I just put that underneath it, put the stone up.
And I remember you mentioning you like a smaller plier because you can really feel the material.
Yeah, these are, I've had these for 25 years. They're from Europe. I bought them when I was back home. And I looked for them here, and they're nowhere to be found. So these are the only pair, as far as I know, that is available in America. Now, when I used the hammer before, I would never do that on something with a point. With a point, you're just taunting a completely different animal. Because that's the weak spot of the stone. If you start hammering on that, you might end up with earrings.
And your personal history, you started stone setting and goldsmithing when you were really young, right?
Yeah, I come from a family of diamond cutters and polishers, and when I was little, we had a diamond cutting and polishing factory in Amsterdam. And at age 13, I polished my first facet onto a diamond.
Wow. Do you think having that experience cutting stones has made you a better stone setter?
I don't know if it gives you a little more, maybe a little wider view of what you're looking at. Because when you're cutting and polishing stones, you always got to see where the inclusions are. So one of the things most of the time, that's larger stones. I look at the stone and see if any of the inclusions that could be an issue during stone setting. There have been times where, especially if it's an outside job, and the stone is quite heavily included, and some of them look like they're going all the way through. We've told customers now that we probably will not break it, but the chances, because of the inclusions and the way you want this set, the chances have increased tremendously because of the inclusion.
Have you ever run into a snag while you were working on it, or the design or the stone cut just isn't working?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've run into that, and a lot of times you make adjustments, but most of the time you're gonna have to probably start from. A lot of times you have to start from scratch.
Right.
It just wasn't looked at properly or evaluated properly.
Right.
It doesn't happen a lot, but it does. We had a ring several years ago that was on this ring. I think there's 260 stones in there.
Oh my gosh.
And it was for a really tiny little girl. And it even had diamonds in the head. It's all white gold. So I had the ring all set. I was setting the diamonds in the head and in the prongs, but the white gold was too soft and kept breaking on us. So then we had to reevaluate and say, well, let's do the head in platinum, because that will hold up with in the prongs, the metal won't crack. And it did. It worked.
Wow. And the customer was amenable to it?
Yeah.
Wow.
They had we didn't increase the price on the estimate. So they actually got a better product for the same price.
Right. Wow.
You can't change. You can't go back and change.
Right.
There was just a thing we probably should have thought about, but
right.
You don't really get those things like that very often. It's very unique and rare. That's it. On to the next group of
Oh my
stones.
gosh. Wow. Look at that. What a pro. Amazing. Amazing. Awesome. Thank you.
So there you can see how prominent the prongs are. And then this is his old bench pin. Okay.
That ring's crazy.
I know, right? Amazing. Was there another question in there?
Right. No, my brother is talking on the phone behind me.
Hi, Colin's brother. Okay, so so that is prong setting, and I have the hammer. Come on. I have the hammer loaded up on the flex shaft here, and I'll upload that flex shaft video for you guys. It's very Martha Stewart, so it should be pretty intuitive. But basically, the flex shaft comes out like this, and there's a little keyway, and my video explains this. And then you can, if you want to play around with the hammer, you just make sure that it's locked in through the keyway, and then when you hit the pedal, you hear that? It's not spinning anymore, it's hammering. So I did buy one of these for the area. So if you wanted to, you could check all this out, and then you could say, okay, I want to play around with this hammer, and then you would take it. I mean, I cut these prongs and I cut them kind of haphazardly. I should have been more careful, but I was just in the middle of teaching. But you would hammer, and it's hammering down onto the prong. And there's a reason we never have silver prongs on really fancy jewelry like that. Silver prongs are a huge no-no because silver is just way, way too soft. So, you know, gold is nice and strong, but we usually use like platinum heads, and platinum heads are used because, so they're hammering that down actually made this setting way more symmetrical, which is what we want. We're looking for symmetry. This one, it was just cut kind of haggard. That's my bad. But white gold settings are soft, gold settings are soft, but we use platinum quite a bit, and that's because platinum is just so much harder and so much more stable for cutting these, cutting prongs and stuff. So play around with this hammer, leave it on my instructor bench here, and then go ahead and familiarize yourself with tube setting. Tube setting is going to also require just your regular heart burr, except for we're talking about exact sizes when it comes to tubes. So for your 3mm stone, I have 3mm material, and that's the trick. The only trick with tube setting versus prong setting is you want 3mm material. So this is 4 3mm stones. I have silver for 3mm stones, and then I have for our diamonds, I have for 2mm and for 2.5mm. And the trick to this stuff, as I'll show you with the copper, is that it has a really nice thick wall. And Peter talked a little bit about thick wall tubing, and the difference between thin and thick wall tubing here is you can see how nice and beefy that material is around the outside, you know, that thick wall of the tubing. It gets even thicker if we look at this 2mm. You can see that, how thick it is in relation to the diameter. It's really thick wall tubing. And Rio Grande just sells it as straight up, like they call it, thick wall tubing. So you know, you're not really guessing too much. And so there's a difference between thin wall and thick wall. It's about a 1/2 mil difference. And what that allows you to do is actually cut the seat and remove material. So for our tube settings, we use, we measure our stone, always measure. So you're always measuring. We're gonna figure out, make sure you turn it on, zero it out in the closed position. And then we're going to make sure we have the correct size heart burr for our stone. So we're going to make sure for our 3mm stone that the stone itself is actually 3mm. So let's make sure that, yep, we're at 3mm. Then we're going to make sure our heart burr is slightly less. That's good, looks good. And then for this setting, we're going to want to use a stone setting burr, and this is the only time I ever use a stone setting burr, and as you can imagine, Abe doesn't really use stone setting burrs because he doesn't really do tube settings, right? It's not really a commercial style setting. So a stone setting burr is what Abe was critical of. You just don't have as much control, and that's this shape. But what we're going to be able to do is take our tube and insert this the stone setting burr in far enough so that the stone itself is flush with the top of the tube. So we're going to hog out all that material, remove that material with our stone setting burr, and then we're going to cut the rest of the seat with our heart burr. So I'm going to swap out my handpiece here. And you could cut straight down with your heart burr if you wanted to, but it just heats up. There's a little too much friction because of the cutting surface, the style of the cutting surface. So the stone setting burr for tube settings is preferred for this setting technique. You can set stones into any tube, any kind of any kind of tube in any direction, which is the coolest part about it. You can pre-drill this as well, which I might do. Take a drill bit that is the corresponding size, and again, all you have to do is measure it to get a 3 millimeter or something close size drill bit. And another benefit to having this Jacobs chuck, which is a 3-jaw chuck as opposed to the quick disconnect that you saw Abe using, is that you can put like big things in here and it'll hang on to it. So with tube setting, you don't want to set the stone prematurely. You want to make sure you solder the tube on your piece exactly where you need it to go. I'm going to hog out a little bit of material with this big drill bit. Okay, so I just kind of hogged out the material with my drill bit. And now I'm going to use my stone setting bird to make room for the culet and the pavilion of the stone. And you always want to make sure that the table of the stone, depending on the width of the girdle, that the table of the stone is flush with the top of the tube. That's how you're going to be securing this stone. And so now I'm going to be able to insert my stone setting burr in, and I'm cutting the seat. I'm cutting a bevel in and removing enough material that's going to help me set my stone. Okay, and then now I'm just going to cut a little bit of a seat with my heart burr, which I know is slightly smaller. And I'm just creating almost like a bezel, but I'm going to put my heart burr in, and I know that it's a little smaller, and I'm coming in perfectly parallel. You want to come in perfectly parallel with the sides of the tube, and then I'm cutting perpendicularly around. I'm cutting just a mild seat all the way around as this bottoms out. So I'm actually going in a slight circle, and then I'll be able to insert my stone, which you can easily do by bring my situation here, putting the stone down on the table, on its table, and then putting the tube over the top of it to secure it in place, and it will snap in place. After it snaps in place, you want to make sure it is actually seated inside of there. And if you've drilled too far in, then you want to make sure you remove some of that material. So it's really important to have an excess or like an out. You want to make sure you have a hole if you're inexperienced with this, so that you can monitor how low it's actually going inside of there. Mine is so low, I drilled got a little crazy on the drilling, but I feel as though my stone is low enough in there that I can actually just file the top of my and you always want to protect the stone. You never want to go too far, but I'm going to file it just to eyeball it up here. Make sure it's far enough down. And now I feel comfortable removing the stone. And you can just do that with anything. Just push it out from the back, as long as your design accounts for it. And I'm going to file it a little bit further, just so my table just is barely squeezing over the top of there, because I want to show off the stone as much as possible. I don't want to cover it up, and the silver is so soft it will absolutely cover it up. And then I'm just going to bevel the outer edge. So I'm removing the material just slightly on the outside of this ring and just beveling it ever so slightly. It's just a little thick. I don't need it all there because I don't want it to detract from my stone. And I'm just going to sand that a little bit, make sure there's no burrs, and then maybe go back in just a little bit with my stone setting burr and remove any interior burrs from filing. Go ahead and set my stone again. Upside down. And did you hear that click? The stone should click right in. And maybe I'll do it again. And so you only have so many times where it'll click in because we're wearing out the metal. All right, listen carefully. No, too late. Didn't really click that great. All right, so the thing you want to look for too is that the stone is really flat in there. It's not sort of off kilter. It's really nice and straight, and that the table, depending on the height of those facets, the stone is at the exact height of the tube. After you've set it perfectly, and you feel really confident about the setting, and it's not too deep, it's not too shallow, then you can take some bead setting or some faceted setting punches. I'll zoom out here. And this is a really cool set. They're called setting punches, but we don't really use them as punches as much as I use them sort of as a burnisher almost. And it has this adorable little handle on it. And then you're going to find the size that matches your stone, which this doesn't look like it matches my stone. Matches the outside of my setting. So I'm going to find one that matches the outside of my setting and cups the outside of my setting. So for this 3mm ID tubing, I'm going to use the 4.5mm setting punch, and I'm just going to lock this into place with this knurled chuck, and then I'll be able to just go over the top of this tube, and I'm burnishing it over. I'm just going to go in circular motions. I'm going to burnish that tube over the top of the stone, and it's basically going to seal it in like a bezel. And then if this isn't working, or you don't feel confident about that setting, or if you tap on it and you can hear it wiggling around in there, you can then take the hammer if you needed to and hammer that setting over. But you risk breaking the stone, you risk setting it asymmetrically. So the best thing you could do is do the hard part, as Abe has said, and set this seat really carefully, and then you can go over the top of it with the stone setting punch. So that is that. Any questions? No?
No?
Okay.
So for the assignment, you were just doing the prong ones?
Just the
or
prong.
the tube? Okay.
Yep, just the prong ones. I just wanted you to I wanted to show you the tube setting one. You'll read about it. So, you know, the tube setting is probably better for maybe if you wanted to add a stone to your production work or something like that. You know, it's super easy. It's super reliable. Even Peter was saying like that's the most confident stone setting he does. But prong setting is much more of like a top tier stone setting technique. So if you can get a little bit of practice in, you'll be ahead of the curve in terms of, you know, like you could buy commercial settings and buy, you know, standard size stones. And as long as you know how to measure everything, then you could make, you know, all kinds of weird things by soldering commercial prongs on them. And so it's a more sophisticated technique, but it also sort of lives in a more, you know, like commercial jewelry aesthetic. And then tube setting is sort of like the middle class setting, right? You can apply it to anything and anybody can afford that stone setting because it didn't break the bank and it's not as complex. But it can fall out. So you really want to make sure that you're seating it properly, that it is low enough in that tube, and that you're setting it. And I love this, no, not that. I love this stone setting, the stone setting kit. It really makes it really simple to do tube settings. But play around with the hammer too if you'd like. It makes the tube setting really easy to do also. But it's just a matter of making sure it's in there pretty good. But yeah, just the prong settings are due. It's on our schedule for today, but obviously that's going to be pushed to Thursday. Yeah, so thanks for sticking with me. I was able to show you a lot more than I expected, which is really great. And in terms of die forming, I have a ton of acrylic sitting here for you. So you can just grab material that's there. First come, first serve. And then I have a huge sheet of regular, like clear red acrylic that you can use, and you can cut it on the bandsaw. Always wear a respirator and always wear your safety glasses because it's nasty stuff. And then you can cut multiple pieces. You could glue it together and then cut them out together, all kinds of options, or go ahead and laser cut as somebody also suggested. So what's due for Thursday is your prong setting samples. So ×2 of the 3mm prongs, and then you can solder them onto something, whatever. And then ×2 of the 4mm prong settings, and then ×1 of the 5mm prong settings. Okay, and I would, maybe practice with the big one first. And they will be crooked, and that's why, you'll get a dose of how that works. If you want more, I can give you more for extra credit, and then if you want to put some on your piece, we also have some extras. If you can show me where it goes on your piece and have a nice plan, I'd be happy to give you extras to practice with. But prong setting is it's tough, and you have to get to a point where you feel confident with your ability to prong set, because it'll be a really helpful skill to have. And then if you want to make a custom basket setting, then you'll be ahead of the curve. And so I'll be sharing a separate video with you on prong setting or on basket setting when I'm able to record it, but it is kind of a custom thing. So I'm going to play around with this tube setting a little bit longer, and then I'll have all these things available on the table for you. You can see any mistakes that I've made. One of these, I cut the prong damn near off, so that was a huge mistake. Don't ever do that. After the stone was set, I cut the prong off. Whoops. Amateur hour there. So lots of opportunity, but this is literally just sample making. But if you wanted to eventually sell these, they're totally sellable. So think about a pendant and solder them on. I also have this cool sample that Owen made me that I'm going to just set a bunch of tubes in over the next couple of days, and then you'll have that available to you too. So this is a really cool example of just a simple form that was an ellipse that has a bottom on it that some tubes were soldered onto. And so you could see how tubes can be added onto anything, and then you can adorn anything with tube settings. And so I'm gonna be setting stones in this cool thing that Owen made me, and then check out that die forming video when I post it, because I put Sophia's piece in there, and her piece is so phenomenal because it's die formed and it has stones set in it. So how amazing is that? Let me share my screen again. Anybody can check out if they want to, but if you want to see some cool student work, you can hang in there with me. This will just be recorded. But this is, this is Andrea's. This was not die formed, but it could have been. She did this by hand. So it's a form of die forming because she used technically somewhat of a conforming die, and she, wait, can you see this? Are you guys seeing what I'm seeing?
We see your like browser window. Like if you have the image pulled up big, we don't see that
yet. Thank you. It didn't have that red thing going on. Screen 1. How about now? You see a silver thing?
Yep.
Cool. Alexa has a really cool example of a conformed die piece too that she just did in the big stump. And Andrea made these two pieces match by hammering them into a stump as well. So you don't need a fancy die, but sorry, Andrea and Alexa, the die is going to make it perfect so it fits, and you don't have to play around with matching these two. But you guys did a phenomenal job despite those circumstances. So this is a cool example too of not only die forming the major aspects or major parts of this piece, but she also die formed this weird organic looking interior space by just squishing the metal into the die form mold. So that was really cool. This is an example of die formed acrylic sheet. So this was clear acrylic and then die formed. You can heat it up in a toaster oven or with a heat gun, and then hurry up and die form it, and it will form in the die. So that's a really cool option you can do with using just straight up acrylic sheet. And then you can manipulate it and cut it just like you would metal. Here's a lovely little locket using conformed just dapping blocks with a hinge. This was an intro student, actually. This is one of my advanced students from UW Whitewater. And then, oh, here's Sophia's piece from Confab 2 years ago. So she has a beautiful little set stone inside of this die-formed locket with a 5-knuckle hinge. So that is and a cute little clasp, but that's a tube setting. And then on the inside, she had a bunch more tube settings. Look at all the tube settings and some flush settings. She's got it going on in here. She's got all kinds of cool stuff. And then the outside of it had even more tube settings. So the variety of adding all of these little tube settings is, you know, just the sky is the limit on some of this stuff. And then this is an example of a bunch of die-formed pieces that were also, some of them were enameled, some of them were powder-coated, some of them have acrylic, and these were all die-formed. All of these pieces were die-formed. Lots of options, lots of new techniques for you guys to think about. And if you have questions about your die, just let me know. If you have questions about where the optimal place to put your tube setting is, let me know. Or your prong settings, if you want to include prong settings, you can. Check out this work by Amelia Tolke, where she used commercial settings to enhance a piece that didn't need to have like a bunch of custom settings. It was better for the work to have like really sort of commercial looking settings on it. And she just soldered a bunch of commercial prong settings together, which is just kind of a lot of fun. And then she just set a bunch of stones, and you get really good at setting stones when you're making work that isn't sort of bound by some like literal specificity. So these pieces, she soldered these little like all silver with, you know, plated chains, all of these stones on these plates to make this really decorative looking stack of plates that she manipulated. But the stone settings are all just like these dorky commercial stone settings that she plunked on here and then cut the setting or cut the seat for the stone and then set the stones. So obviously this is supposed to look kind of chintzy and fake and weird, you know, like kind of cheap looking. And that was the aesthetic for the piece. But, you know, think about how it enhances the piece, how, you know, you can do it simply and elegantly, and then how you can maybe also incorporate die forming. You know, Sophia cut this geometric shape out, and you can kind of see this geometric shape repeat in her work pretty consistently. But anyway, so think about all those options. Tube setting is sort of the workhorse of the setting world, and then I can't wait to evaluate all your prong settings. Don't worry if you're struggling. So start with the 5th one. If it's off, you'll understand like how to try and make things symmetrical. So let me know if you want more. If you want to practice with more, I'm happy to give you some more to play with. But think about, you know, cutting out little pieces of metal and sticking them onto something so you have something a little bit more girthy to hang on to. This ring that Owen made me with a tube soldered on it is a really great thing to practice tube setting on, because I'm able to hold on to it really easily and manipulate it and play with it until I set the stone. So, you know, think about soldering these things on because you're working so little. And then play around with die forming and run some dies past me, right? All you need is a silhouette. All you need is that basic outline of that shape. And then once you get me, you know, comparable to what Colin has provided for his model, even though he's got to work a couple kinks out in terms of the thickness, he still has the overall area that he needs in silver. And that's good enough for me to lop off a big chunk of silver for him. So if you want silver, I'm happy to provide. I also have some really thick wire. This is 14 gauge wire. And then additionally, here's the beautiful 18 gauge silver. I have 3 of these. So I can give you, you know, a fair chunk. I think we divided it up. It's roughly about 2 by 3 inches each. And then this is the 14 gauge. This is like This weighs like a half a pound. This is really, really thick material, and this is at 14 gauge that you can flush set in, but it can also be used for some of those elements, particularly I'm thinking for some of Colin's elements. So let me know what you need, just in an area, and then I'll be around tomorrow or Thursday or Friday. Just set up an appointment with me so we know that we're going to cross paths and you get the materials you need. Whew. Okay, what else? What else can I do for you guys?
I think that's it until I get back in the studio.
All right, sounds good, right? Isn't it so frustrating? You can't like keep working. Okay, so I'll see you guys, and email me with whatever you need, and I'll see you when I see you.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, bye.
Bye.